Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's Modern Sales Pros Masterclass on leaving no lead behind, the science of converting leads to meetings. We're going to give folks just a few minutes here to roll in and get situated. And I'm really excited to be joined by our amazing panelists. Both Trey and Aaron are down in Austin. But gang, as everyone's rolling in here, what, any new hobbies that you've picked up during our wonderful time in pandemic here? We're on day, I think, 100 in San Francisco.
Well, I recently joined Masterclass. My wife and I, we've been through the entire catalog of Netflix, and so we thought it's time to get some educational content. Learn some new things. So we're doing the wine appreciation masterclass with the Wine Spectator editor. It's pretty nice.
It's not, what's nicer? Not leaving any lead behind, though, Aaron. I gotta say, Pinot Noir, converting leads to meetings. I'm gonna go with converting leads.
It's a tough choice.
You convert the leads, Rich, then you get bigger bonus checks, and then you can buy the fine wine that the connoisseurs enjoy, not that Boone's wine.
It's $2 chuck.
Don't knock the Trader Joe's wine.
Yeah. Trey, how about you? Any new hobbies that you've picked up during coronavirus?
We started stretching canvas to make our house a better place to live. Not that we're stretching canvas and just hanging stretched canvas places. We're painting onto the stretched canvas. But when you get on Amazon to buy canvas that's large, like wall sized, it's like $2,000, and canvas is not $2,000, and neither are 2x4s. So we've just started, we just stretched a bunch of canvas, and now we've got these custom sized 2x4 and raw canvas custom pieces of art in our house. It's kind of cool.
That's pretty awesome. I have to say, we've done a lot of these events, and most people are like, oh, I learned how to make like sourdough bread, or, I took up yoga. That is by far and away the most environmentally friendly and freaking awesome thing that I think we've heard since we got started here. But
we also took up sourdough bread, by the way.
I love it. You just got to work that one in there. Well,
yeah, we did.
Let's get started here, gang. I'm really, really excited to be joined by Trey and Aaron, both co-founders from Chronologic, who you're going to hear a little bit more about in a second. Before we jump into this, for all of our folks on the recording, just a few housekeeping items. First, please do use the Q&A panel. That's how we're going to make sure that Trey and Aaron can answer your questions fully and completely. Second, the recording will be made available afterwards. And before I hand it off to Trey and Aaron to kick us off, just a few words about Modern Sales Pros. Aaron's been a longtime member, and Chronologic has been a large advocate for MSP in the Austin MSP community, so we're excited to be working with them. But MSP, or Modern Sales Pros, is the world's largest community for revenue leaders in sales management, operations, and the related disciplines. So we bring together 17,000 members to help our members answer questions they'd otherwise struggle to solve on their own. And this can range from things as strategic as how do I think about opening up a new office, to things that are as tactical as making sure that your compensation plans are set up, and everything in between. And we work with great sponsors to bring content programs forward that help our community members answer difficult questions they'd otherwise struggle to solve on their own. So enough about MSP. I'm going to hand it over to the team at Chronologic. And today we're going to be talking about leaving no lead behind, the science of converting leads to meetings. This content is phenomenal. We've been through it a few times just in our prep. And this is some of the most illuminating information I think we've delivered in MSP in a very long time. So really excited to introduce Trey and Aaron from Chronologic.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate the tee up. And I'll just add to, MSP. My participation in MSP in Austin has led me to meet some of the top sales leaders, top sales ops folks, and even make some friends, meet some mentors, meet some mentees, it's been a really valuable use of time. Used to mean hanging out in person, after a long day. Now it's all virtual, but I think that's hopefully temporary. So I'm really excited for everybody. And I even saw a few of the folks from Austin MSP have joined today. So thank you guys for joining. What we're going to talk about today is how you can leave no lead behind, the science of converting leads to meetings. And at a broad level, we're going to talk about how real the struggle is, how hard it is to get what you're trying to get done today. And a lot of your jobs are harder than ever. We're going to talk about, really get into the science and the academics, something that Trey's been studying for years, which is best practices for meeting magic. How do I convert at a significantly higher rate the leads that come from different channels into actual sales meetings and appointments with prospects? Then we're going to give you some specific examples from companies with data and numbers and specific approaches and strategies that have helped them double, triple their results that they would normally have in a matter of weeks. And they're big brands that you'll recognize too. And then we'll have time for audience questions. And I appreciate all the great questions that we saw that you guys have submitted. So first thing is, the struggle is real, right? It's harder than ever. This is literally me and some of the team in February. Doing work. We're in Scottsdale at the B2B Demand Gen conference, mingling with prospects and companies and making all kinds of relationships and building, personal impressions with people. That means that they will remember us and they will join us for those meetings later. Right next to that is the same team, and myself included, trying to generate business in March. And it's mostly chronologic people in that photo. It is harder than ever. There's no happy hours. There's no clinking of glasses. It's hard. And I know for us, 2/3 of our entire demand gen efforts were focused on in-person events last year and coming into this year. So we've had to refocus everything, and we've had to learn that we don't have those in-person connections anymore to build that rapport. And so we're figuring out, how does that translate into digital mediums? And we're going to share some specific strategies with you today on how to do that and take your digital game to the next level. The other aspect of why this is so hard is because of what at Chronologic we call the last mile problem. We've borrowed this term from the logistics industry, the last mile, and we've applied it here to the marketing lead. And the last mile is that gap between marketing and sales. And your marketing teams, they have their strategy, their content, their budget, and they work really hard throughout the year to build interest, awareness, and ultimately like appetite and demand in the form of people who say, hey, I've now learned about Modern Sales Pros, I'm interested. Or I've learned about Chronologic, I'm interested. I've heard about it, it's on my radar, and they are ready for a conversation. And then on the sales side of things, that if you have a meeting with your prospect, you can use your talent and tenacity to build that relationship with them and pull them across the finish line to become a customer. But right where the two meet, right where marketing has to take all those leads and you have to help convert those into actual sales meetings, it's really hard. And it is the biggest drop off in the modern revenue funnel of most companies. Thousands and thousands of leads every year never see the light of day in your calendar and in your prospects' calendars. They're interested, but you can't connect with them at the right moment. You don't connect with them with the right messaging, and you never get that chance to speak with them. And it's a giant wasted opportunity. And it's bigger than ever before, partly because of we don't have the in-person channels. And also because of just how complicated and sophisticated all these different lead streams in a modern revenue engine is. So we're going to talk about how we close that gap and what that means and some of the language to do that. Okay, so I wanted to give you a sense of the problem, how big it is, why it exists, how significant it is. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're honest, you're dealing with some of the last mile problem within your organization. So we want to talk about when you have a lead and you are in the process of connecting with them and trying to get time, earn time with them in their calendar, how do we do that? So I'm going to turn it over to my co-founder and our CRO at Chronologic, Mr. Trey Allison, to talk about some best practices for meeting magic. Trey.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, let's talk about getting a calendar invite on the calendar. Let's set a meeting. It's actually a lot harder than you think it is. I mean, it's true. You can just double click on your calendar, add an invite, send it over to your prospect, and be done with it. But we all know it's not that simple. Number one, it's all about speed. It's all about striking while your customer, your prospect is still interested, when they're still thinking about you. And not just striking with an email, striking with the calendar invite first. We call it a calendar first negotiation. And we're going to talk a lot about that, why we focus on calendar first, and what that this is just a negotiation. And then finally, we'll wrap this up with what makes a great meeting invite. I mean, very brass tacks. What does a good title look like? What should you be putting in the location field? What makes a good agenda? That sort of thing. So yeah, calendar first negotiation. Look, setting a meeting is a negotiation. You're talking about a time, whether somebody wants to give you their time, and what you have to offer them in exchange for their time. What you want in this negotiation is a meeting on the calendar set. So then why are you starting the negotiation? Why are you anchoring yourself? Why is your opening move in the negotiation an email asking if you can have permission to set a meeting with somebody? That's so far from the result you want, you're never going to get there. There's going to be 6 emails in between that email, and every email has a pretty good probability of never leading to another email. So let's anchor with where you want to be, and that's on the calendar. So it's you got to anchor strong, and I'll show you how to anchor strong, what kind of content lets you anchor strong, and politely. You're probably thinking like, God, I don't want to just throw something on somebody's calendar. That would be like, it'd be a jerk move, and it would be absolutely if you weren't bringing value. If you think it's too audacious to put a calendar invite on somebody's calendar, you shouldn't be setting a meeting with them. Like, you're wasting their time. So bring your A game. You got to figure out what value are you going to give to somebody such that when they see that calendar invite on your calendar, they go, yeah, that would be a good use of my 30 minutes. Absolutely. I'd love to accept it. What's really interesting is, the next thing you probably think is, what about their availability? Like, if I just put it on their calendar, like, how do I know that it works? 2 things. One, it probably does. Like, statistically, there's a lot of open spots. And if it's not open, it's flexible. And that's the other thing. You land on something that's busy. If your meeting is valuable enough, if that meeting type that you're proposing is valuable enough, we see people move stuff to make room for you, because it's easier to lean over and go, hey, Bill, can we move that thing to Wednesday, than sending 3 emails back and forth. Your prospects don't want to send emails. They don't want more clutter in their inbox. You don't want to send emails. You don't want more clutter in the inbox. And also, by the way, emails going back and forth for setting calendar invites, they're the same emails. They're so boring. No, I can't do 2. Can you do 3? No, I can't do 3. It's like, just minimize all that. Do everyone a favor. Go direct to the calendar, and then send them 1 email and call their attention to that calendar invite on the calendar. And I'll show you how to write that email, and I'll show you what makes a good calendar invite.
And I think this is a really important point, and it's something where a lot of folks don't think of it as a negotiation, but it is. And it's just like your first principles of negotiating, whether it's a contract, whether it's a purchase, whether it's anything. It's really, really important to think, I'm negotiating for time, which is the most valuable thing that Trey and Aaron have.
The
And to
only
think
thing.
of it like that. It's the only thing you can't get more of. And this is something from the modern sales pros perspective. We've actually implemented a lot of these, and it's improved our collaboration with our community members. It's improved our collaboration with our sponsors like astronomically, because it's so much easier than those 15 emails back and forth. Hey, Trey, does 2 work? No. Well, what about 3? Oh, no, I got to take my dog for a walk then. Whatever it might be.
It agreed. And another thing is the calendar invite itself. So these are 7 deadly meeting invite mistakes, and Aaron's packaged these in this format for me, and I think it's great because it's easy to carry around in your pocket, metaphorically, if not literally, if you're really into calendar invites. So number 1, these are bite sized. We'll get into more tactics after this, but here's some pro tips. Valueless agendas. Quit sending over agendas that are just like intro, stuff. It's so meaningless. I can't even remember that. Yeah, exactly. Intro, maybe a value sentence and next steps. It's like, that's like when a prospect sees that, that's literally no text. Like they're blind to it because they've seen it 6,000 times. It's invisible to their eyes. So don't clutter their life. Just don't do that. Let's provide them value. Every letter they read that you type needs to bring value. It needs to be unique from all the other letters that they read, all the other words they read. They don't need those words. They've already read them 1,000 times. Lengthy description, same principles. Hey, I'm looking forward to spending these 30 minutes learning about XYZ, and we can do this and that. And it's basically another giant email within the calendar invite. That's basically your email. I bet some of you have even copied and pasted the email you use to set the meeting into the description of the calendar invite. Yet, let's not do that. Though the vice versa is great. If you've got a great agenda in your calendar invite, paste that into the email that you're using to get somebody to set a meeting with. Show them what the value is right there in your email. So yeah, don't take your email, put it in the description, go the other way. Meaningless titles like sync, catch up, chat. No, same principle. It's nothing. Just leave it blank. Just send them a blank one instead. Like it's nothing. It doesn't carry any value. By the way, I've done all these. So like, don't feel bad. I've done all these. It's the only reason why I know not to do them. Long emails not focused on the invite. You get one ask in sales. You get one ask. I like to say you get one question mark per email. You get one ask. When they finish that email, they have one task. You can't give them 2 tasks or 3 tasks because guess what? They'll either pick none of them or they'll pick the easiest one, which is the one you probably want them to do the least. So give them one. And the one thing that you want your email to do, you want them to click accept. So you don't get to say like, hey, could you send that thing over and this? And oh, can we also meet? That's 2 CTAs. That's 2 call to actions. That's 2 asks. You're one. And this email is laser focused on setting a meeting. Full stop. Pasting the text from your meeting link or your bridge. Yeah, you get a new Zoom. You got your new job. You take that whole body of text, the 1-800 numbers and the bridge and the international numbers and all the links and the sublinks, the private links, and you copy the 58 things and you pop it into the location and throw it in the description just in case, because just in case. And your prospect hates it because they have no idea what to do with all that. No clue. There's too much. There's garbage. It's just they're trying to join the meeting. They're 2 minutes late, and now they're scrolling through like mountains of a tiny little calendar invite on their. It's a nightmare. So don't do that. Find the easiest way to get somebody in a meeting and give them that. I use my Zoom public room. Yes, I know it's controversial, but I do. I just use that, no code, no nothing. And then when people show up, I lock it. I don't lock it. I turn on the waiting room, right? So I have to admit people in. So it's not wide open. But when I start the meeting, when all the guests that I'm expecting come in, I turn on the waiting room. And then if somebody strange comes in, or maybe somebody from the next call that's butting up against this call comes in, that's fine. I just see them in the waiting room and everything's cool. Why? Because I want that link to be uber portable. You don't want to miss some contract proposal that's going to go out because your prospect, who you've been working weeks to get on the phone with, spent 5-10 minutes trying to figure out what your keypad is and your code and which do I dial in the phone number from Australia or what? Don't do that. Just and test it. By the way, if you're going to use a bridge, like test it. In pro tip, if you're going to use a bridge, put the number in first, and commas are pauses to smartphones. So if it's like dial this number and wait, and then dial the code, well, put in the number, put in a couple commas, it'll cause the phone to pause, and then put in the code, and then try it yourself to see if it works. And if it does, your prospects will love you. Click, boom. All the best companies in the world do it. You should too. Not testing your meeting link or bridge, already covered that. Asking if you can ask to meet. Asking if you can ask to meet. Too many steps. Don't ask to ask. Don't, I'm in Austin. My dad's this real great Texas guy. It's now kind of a meme in our family. But growing up, he used to say, and I would too, seriously, we used to say this, fixing to get ready to, right? It's like getting ready to do something. I'm fixing to get ready to go to the post office, right? This is the equivalent. Don't ask somebody if you can ask them to set a meeting with them. Just set a meeting with them. Save them. Don't fix them to get ready to nothing. Just do it. Just do it. So those are the 7 deadly sins. And now let's talk about the actual brass tacks of what a good calendar invite looks like. And remember your goal. Your goal is what's on that right. Reduce, minimal, make it clean, easy to consume value, and simply go, yes, click, done. Meeting is done. You're doing all this legwork so you can reduce the barrier of that meeting to a single click for your prospect. I guarantee you will get way more meetings, not double, triple, quadruple, like way more, like many hundreds of %. So let's start with the top. Your title. I'm going to fly through this one because I want to wrap up with the title. Start with your company name, because that's what they see on their calendar invite. Don't put their name or their company name on the invite, like, because it gets cut off. The longer it gets cut off in the calendar. So you don't want them to look on their calendar and think, all right, what do I have to do today? And then see their name at 2 p.m. Like, that doesn't tell them anything. Put your company name first. You probably think you're being generous by putting their name first. It's nice thought, doesn't actually work that way. Put the company name first, and then use like double pipes. It's the alternative / key. I think they look really great. They're better than the two. I know this is popular. Is the two the less than and equal to less than equal to less than and greater than signs together. They look okay. It's a little bit weird. Look like kind of a coding error. A dash is okay. If you're going to do a dash, do an M dash or an N dash if you're feeling real crazy. But I recommend the double pipe is the best. The bars, boom, boom, two next to each other, no spaces, super clean. And then put their first name. But in between that, you need to put the meeting type. So Chronologic is the user company, and then demo. So it's a Chronologic demo, double pipe, and then personalize it to them, right? And that is a valuable meeting type, that valuable title. We'll talk about meeting type names more in a bit. Very important. Meeting link, number 2, no junk, already discussed it. Put the shortest, quickest route to your meeting in there, be done with it. Number 3, your description. That's a copy paste. Leave it out. If you're feeling real like progressive, just leave it out. But if you're gonna put one in there, just put something that's just meaningless because it's not that important. Like it's a formality. Hey, looking forward to chatting. Can't wait to talk, whatever. The agenda is where the meat is. That's where everyone wants to know, okay, what are we doing with this time? Well, there are 4 or 5 parts to an agenda. The best agendas have 5 things. So I'm going to pretend like we want the best agendas. So let's just all make them all 5. Right up top, the value statement. This is your executive statement. This is your chance to sell. This is when you say, hey, this is the one value problem or statement that we solve. For us, it's like the last mile problem, right? So we'll put that right at the top of the agenda. Interesting. It's valuable. We're going to talk about it. It's a little vague, but not. It's still you're setting the tone for the discussion. Which, by the way, these agenda items don't have to go in order. Like you can kind of jump around. You're just giving the prospect just wants a sense of how they're going to spend their 30 minutes. So give them a sense. Last mile problem. The question, a customer-focused question. This is something that gets them, it's a hook. And it asks them a question that they can answer when they're deciding, when they're hovering over the yes button and they see that question. They go, oh yeah, I know the answer to that. And I want to tell you the answer to that. Boom, yes. Hot take. This is the hardest part of an agenda, the hot take, which is the opinion. You don't have to, a really good opinion doesn't necessarily agree. The best ones don't agree with what your prospects think. They almost do. They're edgy, they're a little controversial, they're not that big of a deal, but it's enough to make your prospect go, well, I don't feel that way, or let's talk about that. Maybe I feel another way. A good one for us is we go, link schedulers don't work. We'll put that in the agenda. People go, what? Well, I use Calendly all the time, or I use, and by the way, link schedulers do work in certain situations. They work great. But it gets people excited and it gets people wanting to talk to you. So your hot take is an important thing. That one's really hard to come up with, by the way. You'll struggle with it, but when you figure it out, you'll feel on top of the world. And then today's deliverable, this is super important. This is the outcome of this meeting that you're having. Ideally, a quantitative outcome, something that they can walk away with and put in their pocket and share with their team, and something that gives them a deliverable that's backed by numbers. And by the way, your meeting type and your title should be related to that outcome, right? This is the value proposition of your meeting, and this is where the meat of it. Number 5, the next meeting, the next deliverable, not next steps, specific. What is the next deliverable and the next meeting type, and when is it? If you're really good, you're going to lock it in on the calendar on the call, and you're going to help them understand what the next deliverable is. And then your name. So I got one more thing for you on the next slide, which is what is the best meeting type name? How do you name this meeting coming out? You struggle with this. If you find yourself putting in like a sync or a chat, this means you need to go through the process of coming up with a good meeting type name. Here's a great sniff test, right? If the meeting type name is good. Let's try it with a sync. Okay. Can your prospect ask one of the following to her coworker? Hey, Emma, want to join me for a sync at 10 a.m.? Want to join me for a chronologic chat at 10 a.m.? Emma is going to go, what? That's what Emma's going to say. If Bianca can say, hey, Emma, want to join me for a chronologic demo at 10 a.m.? That's a solid meeting type. That's a solid meeting type name. Needs to be tied. Remember, number 4, the deliverable, quantitative deliverable. Ideally, these two are related. My favorite meeting type name, I'll leave you with this. My favorite meeting type name, MongoDB's actually, they do this. It's called a schema review. The best meeting type names follow the pattern where you can insert the name without the brand name. Remember I said put your brand name first in the calendar invite? If you can pull that out and it still is unique and they know it's you, that's the sign of the best meeting type name, because that means that you've gotten the meeting type so specific that only you can offer that meeting type. No other company on the planet can offer that meeting type. And that is the definition of value. Let's try it. Hey, Emma, want to join me for a schema review at 10 a.m.? If Emma is a database person, which she probably is because Bianca wouldn't be asking her this, she's going to go, oh, yeah, with Mongo? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. That is a great meeting type name. And you should really sit on that, a meeting type name, and really think about it before you just throw one in there. It can make or break your meetings. And also, the whole meeting, the whole agenda is tied around that meeting type name. It's derived from that meeting type name. So you got to start there first and then work your way back on your agenda. I think that's it.
Awesome.
Aaron, back to you.
Thanks, Trey. Great work. And I'll add a couple other ones in there that I've seen our clients have a lot of success with. Account audit. Account audit. Well, what does that mean? Well, we need to talk about something in the account, but we're going to review together how we work. What is our relationship and what we need to do? Maybe something's wrong. This is an account audit. We're going to expose it. We're going to talk about it. A sales planning session, Q3 sales planning session. It doesn't tell everything that's going to happen, but it gives you a sense that we're going to talk about how you're planning and what strategy you have. But there's a lot of good ones out there. It takes time, and this test is a great use, great way to discover what those are. Awesome. And I'm going to talk about one other aspect here of this. But before I do, I know we had a question came in that Rich teed up, said,
it's from Jonathan Sorka actually asked this great question. Trey mentioned this a little bit, but Aaron, I'd love your perspective. Are there meeting platforms that are preferred or that you're seeing some of the best in the world use, or are there the ones that should be avoided altogether?
It's a good question. I don't think I think Trey probably has more expertise on this than I do, but here's what I will say. For me, it's all about throughput, and as a sales leader, it's all about volume. There are many times where I'm doing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 meetings in a row in a day. And so Zoom is a great platform in the sense that I've got the link, it stays the same, and it just lives in there, and I don't have to think about it. And so I can do a high volume. And then the other thing I really like about it is the virtual background. I'm currently in my man cave. I'm halfway through a renovation from the man cave to be a little bit more like a home office, but it's not there yet. And so virtual backgrounds are really nice. And Google Hangouts is nice, but I don't have the virtual background feature, which, it means I'm more limited. Trey, would you add anything to that?
I agree. I like Zoom. I like the way it feels when I'm forcing my customers and prospects to use a certain piece of technology. Feel is really important to me because I'm forcing them to feel everything. And it's not about functionality and features. It's about feel for them. And I like Zoom. I think Zoom feels really, really great. Hangouts is kind of, I don't know, it feels sluggish. WebEx, I think, actually feels pretty cool. It's pretty great. And plus, you can pass the ball, which is kind of a fun thing you can do. And there's one more, Citrix. Yeah, I don't know. That one, GoToMeeting. That one's last time I used it, it was a little sluggish. But they're commoditized, so they're all kind of going to the same thing.
Cool. Okay, so I wanted to touch on that question, and thank you for submitting that, Jonathan. Final thought here before we get into some actual data and examples of what companies are doing. That is a commonly overlooked opportunity here, which is meeting acceptance as a lead qualifier. So we all come up with, in operations and leadership, we often come up with these really elaborate sales lead scoring methods. So, they get this much depending on their recent action. And of course, all the ABM platforms out there are doing some version of this too, where we're coming up with these huge algorithms and that take into account all these different things to try to give you a lead score. These guys are, an A+, and these other guys are just a B-, or these are a 93, and another lead is only a 76. But, just as we've talked about the practicality of not sending a bunch of emails back and forth to then ask if you can ask permission, and just sending the calendar invite. It's the same thing with lead scoring, not always, but often, which is if you're unsure about whether the person is in market or not, and you send out 100 calendar invites to 100 leads from a channel, how many of them accept it is a very strong indication of how interested they are, how actually in market they are. As we mentioned, time is the most valuable thing we have. So if I agree to give you 30 minutes of my time, it's because I am in market for the topic or concept that you're trying to address. And if I don't, I'm not. And I would encourage everyone to try, if you're in management or operations or leadership, just run a test. Take 100. So, as an example, take 100 leads from a webinar in your spring series webinar and send them calendar invites, right? And send another 100 calendar invites to leads from a summer series or some other different, topic or content or a different channel. And if one of them you get back 42 meetings accepted and another one you get back 8 meetings accepted, that tells you so much more than what a typical lead scoring algorithm and system will. So I would encourage you to, use trial and error, use this scientific approach, and it gives leads a chance to effectively vote for how good of quality they actually are by whether they're willing to give you time. Okay. So that kind of covers some of the broad content and some of the specific content on calendar best practices. How is this translating to, and I see there's I know we've got some questions related to, conversion rates. I think we're going to get into this here in these actual results. So one of our clients, their typical motion on a webinar would be, they have a webinar, they have, 300 people register for the webinar, and those leads then get, downloaded, then they get assigned out to SDRs. Those SDRs then begin sending emails to those different leads. And if some of them start to bite a little bit, yeah, that was a good webinar. Then we say, okay, would you be interested in the conversation, talk a little bit more? And then a smaller percentage of those get back and say, yes, I'm open to it. And then you say, okay, great. Now, it was next week or Tuesday at 2 p.m. and a smaller percentage get back. And so our client, instead of doing that normal motion, they use Chronologic to have instant automated scaled outreach, calendar first approach, like Trey is talking about, to those webinar registrants. Trey, thank you so much for registering for the webinar. I'd love to address how some of these topics can be dealt with specifically in your business. I have availability on Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific. And it's a single click for that prospect to join the meeting. And doing that, they saw what was normally a 5% conversion, more than triple, 340%, to an almost 17% conversion. And for them and their business and this product line, that was more than $500,000 in incremental bookings. Went from 235 would be typical for that number of webinar leads and bookings to almost $1 million, not too far shy of $1 million, and 50 sales meetings booked. And for most companies, an additional 2 or 3 good sales meetings is a big deal. So when you've taken that number from like 15 to 50, that's pretty massive. And it's from this calendar first approach. And then on the other end, so from webinars being kind of warm leads, webinar registrations, if we look at hand raisers, demo requests. So we have a client and they've actually gone public with their results. So I'm just going to mention them. They're called Bright Talk. They're a 200 or 300 person company. They have historically been in the range of about 48% conversion, about 50% conversion, recently 48% from if you request a demo or you fill out a form of contact sales. About half of those actually convert to sales meetings that they have with their sales executives. And partly that's because lead assignment, lead routing, response, the outreach via email. A lot of times by the time they respond, the person just never, does a reply. Maybe they've gone and talked to a competitor. Maybe they're no longer focused on the problem that Bright Talk solves. But for whatever reason, they've been about 48%. When they've rolled out a calendar first approach, they saw that number jump to 78%. And this actually happened. I hate that the real dates aren't in here, because this is actually March and April of this year. This is right as the pandemic was hitting. And they because they provide webinars, they did see a big increase in contact us coming in, but they had a small SDR team of just a few people. And they can't hire, train, onboard, and ramp a bunch of SDRs in a matter of weeks when this pandemic went down out of nowhere. But with their automated approach, the calendar first approach, and in this case, the chronologic technology, they were able to take, that normal meeting trajectory that they would have had and have a massive increase in the actual productivity and pipeline generation of the company. Okay. So one more, and this is related to account expansion. So this is cross-sell and upsell motions rather than demo requests or webinars. So this is existing accounts that work with you where you've got a new offer, a new product, maybe a product launch. I personally have seen this done so poorly in my career. I don't want to name any names, but it's whenever we launch a new product at past companies, we have a QBR or something, and we have the product manager go up there and, all right, this product manager is going to tell you about this new product launch. And that product manager is basically trying to be witty and charismatic and entertain and make the salespeople and account people laugh and get their attention, and then ultimately kind of beg them to, please, the next time you speak with your client, please mention this new product. It's a great product. I promise you, and pull me in and I'll be happy to help. And it's a very manual thing. And some of the salespeople and account managers, they might do it, but a lot of times they don't. And they may forget to talk about it in the next meeting. They may just not be meeting with them for months. And after months has passed, the company's decided the product's not that great. We're going to deprioritize it. Getting account expansion motions to happen quickly and happen at scale is really important. If everybody in management out there, must have a sense of what I'm talking about. So in this case, one of our clients, Fortune 1000 client, launched one of their account expansion cross-sells with a calendar first approach. No emails back and forth. We're not waiting for 2 months until the next QBR happens. The minute that product was ready and it had been announced, they sent out with Chronologic hundreds of calendar invitations to the prospects talking about, I want to do an account. I think in this case, it was account audit, or it was an account review or 2020 planning session. One of these.
I think it was an AI road mapping session because it was an AI centric product. And so, it's like, hey, how are you going to, what are your plans in our suite of products? What are your plans to use AI? It was cool. It was a great meeting type.
Very cool. And the results were, I think in this case, there was 1,200 accounts that the management had identified that seemed to have a high propensity for the product. More than 400 of those accounts had accepted those meeting invites and had meetings in the calendar to talk about that new product within 3 weeks of the product launch. Results that they had never seen before. And it just, I think this is one of the biggest areas for improvement, just because I've seen this done so manually and so poorly personally in my own career. And so I would encourage all of you to consider, if you're, at a company you're not selling your first product, you're selling product 2 or 3 or 4, or an upsell or an add-on or a renewal or an expansion, consider a calendar first approach to help really scale and figure out who's actually in market. Don't look at the lead score, see if they accept the meeting invite. Okay, so those were 3 examples to show you guys how this is working. We talked about demo requests or contact us. We talked about webinar registration leads. We talked about account expansion opportunities. And there's many more, following up on chatbot lead, what I call chatbot incompletes, following up on ABM leads that your ABM solutions have surfaced, renewals, et cetera. So I want to put those on you guys' radar. I think this calendar first approach can be useful across your revenue engine. And I hope some of the best practices you've learned today have been helpful. I think we're now going to go to audience questions and open it up.
Yeah, and thank you, Aaron and Trey, for sharing. And I love that notion of the cross-sell story. I've been that product manager. Please go out there. Please, put me in front of the customer here. This is a question that came in during registration. And Aaron, let's start with you on this. Because you talked a little bit around some of the successes that you've seen in your customers. What's a reasonable goal in conversion from reaching out to somebody and converting them to a meeting? How would you, and I know it's probably different for every company, but how would you step back and really think about that and think about establishing maybe a baseline of what's good for my organization?
Is that, Rich, with respect to like conversion rates?
Conversion rates, yeah. So going from kind of contacting you to actually getting the meeting on the calendar to having the meeting.
Well, there are some data points out there that have been, the result of scientific research. One of those is if you shrink response time from a lead, so benchmarks for response time, that's a big one. Getting it down from 30 minutes to under 5 minutes on average increases your overall conversion rate by 27x, not 27%, but 27x. So if you're doing 5% conversion from some kind of cold, warm lead channel, you could be looking at a massive increase if you just get that response time down from 30 minutes to under 5 minutes from when somebody takes an action. Maybe that's downloading a white paper. Maybe that's having a chat conversation. Maybe that's doing a demo request or attending a webinar. But that speed to lead is a good place to set some benchmarks. Right now, average speed to lead for demo requests is, 35 minutes. Can we get that down to, 8 minutes? Can we get that down to 2 minutes? You're almost guaranteed to see some conversion increases associated with the speed to lead acceleration. So I would encourage benchmarks there. Otherwise, benchmark setting across just overall conversion of leads, it ranges a lot. Demo requests 50% to 80%. I will say I've done 350 or 400 sales meetings with sales leaders from around the country. So I actually do have a lot of stats on this. Demo requests 50% to 80% is pretty common. Some of the best are doing high 80% to even low 90%.
Wow.
Webinars, high single digits is very common. If you're getting into the teens, you're doing pretty well. We have clients that, we're getting up into the 20-30% range, which is pretty amazing. And then cold leads or old leads a lot of times convert, 2 to 3% is very common. With the calendar first approach, we're seeing those get up in the 10% range, which is if you consider that lead dead and now 1 out of 10 is becoming pipeline, that's a massive increase.
I think that's great. And one more follow on this, and then I want to tee Trey up for a question. Speed to lead, number one across the board. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else that's kind of like a 2 or a 3 in terms of the factors in improving that conversion rate, Aaron?
Outside of speed to lead, it is the messaging in the invitation, which is, exactly what Trey covered in a lot of detail. And then the other thing is that, you do this approach is more valuable for folks who sell to customers who do use calendar, right? So there are, if you sell to, automotive mechanic managers or, delivery professionals, you may need to have an SMS, multi-channel approach to getting their attention.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. And that kind of gets into our next question. Another question in from Jonathan. And Trey, let's start with you on this one. Are there verticals, sales motions, particular roles where you wouldn't use a calendar first strategy?
I have a belief that if you are willing to ask for a meeting with somebody, you should be willing to be calendar first. Like really full stop. And what's interesting about that is, I'm a CEO. People ask for my time all day, every day. You can imagine that it drives me bonkers given my passionate feelings about how to ask people for their time, critiquing the way that I'm getting asked for my time. I really want nothing more. And by the way, I'm starting to see this. I think the message is getting out or something because it's great. just people getting on my calendar. And yeah, I get all this stuff on my calendar, but instead of going through my inbox and reading an email and replying and going back and forth, I can just look through my calendar and I can go accept, decline, accept. Who is this? Go to the inbox. And, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Accept, maybe decline. It's so nice. I can build out my day in like a minute as opposed to like hours. So yeah, I mean, I think the only thing Aaron said is that, are they calendar centric?
Or yeah, I mean, even just calendar users, there are some professions that don't use their calendar that often. And there you may have to get their attention to their calendar to say, send an SMS or even cold call them or send them an email that says, hey, I sent you a calendar invite. Did you, for this time, please take a look at it and let me know if you're available.
Though, Aaron, there's an important little derivative of that. And that's people, you think that because maybe somebody's in an industry that's not tech focused, or maybe that's like they're doing outdoor work, like this guy right here. You think, oh, this guy, if he's my customer, he's not sitting in front of a computer every day. Don't make that assumption. I've been really surprised by how effective a calendar first approach is to some people that aren't in front of computers every day. And then sometimes you're right. Like, the people just don't care about calendar invites. So it could go either way. I say try it and don't make the assumption.
Yeah.
And it's true. I love that idea, Trey, of thinking about your day through your calendar, right? Calendar is destiny anyway. So, hey, did it make sense? Cool. If not, I'm going to go check my email and be like, who's this rich guy? What does he want to talk about? Aaron, I want to tee you up with this one. This is a great question coming in from Matthew Sullivan. Have you ever conducted this approach, this invitation first technique via maybe LinkedIn messaging instead of email, or as a supplement to email?
That's a great question. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-step. I've done it as a two-step process. Now, I'd be interested if somebody's done it as a one-step and how they've done it and how it's worked out. But as a two-step process, I've had success. In fact, some of our biggest customers and accounts have come from absolutely cold LinkedIn outreach from me. And that, so how did that happen? Well, the big thing I would say there is that the LinkedIn messaging is, there's an expectation that it is shorter and less formal than any other channel. And that's how I've had success. So when I look at the deals that I've closed that started as cold LinkedIn outreach, the original outreach was a sentence and a half, maybe, very short. Hey, Rich, I noticed you run, you were the GM at MSP. You guys have a busy calendar. Have you looked at any technology to help you improve your efficiency? Something really, really short like that is friendly. And it shows that I actually have thought about who he is. And I've done all of that in a sentence and a half. And then Rich writes back, hey man, you're right. I am really busy. I haven't really taken a look at those yet. Then I will come back with the calendar approach. Then I will get him a calendar invite, and with some great messaging that describes, gives him a touch on how this could impact his life and his business. And then maybe send him another one-liner back on LinkedIn. Rich, sent you a calendar invite. Please take a look. Please give it consideration. And I've had success like that. So I would recommend that kind of two-step approach on LinkedIn.
And Aaron, I would point out that follows the pattern of if you're willing to ask somebody for a meeting, then you should be willing. If you're willing to take their time, you should be willing to be calendar first with them. It still follows the approach because you got that out of them. You essentially generated a lead.
Yes.
And then from there, you went calendar first. And then there's a question here that's, so is this a good cold outreach tool? Does it only work for inbound leads? No and no. It's not a good cold outreach tool. I mean, you're not like that's, you're not going to ask for somebody's time. Take somebody's time. You got to be more respectful than that. Somebody that knows nothing about you. But is this only good for inbound leads? Absolutely not. It's great for people who do business with you and you haven't talked to in 2 years. You got plenty of value to bring them. You haven't talked to them in 2 years. A lot's happened in 2 years. Let's talk about it. Or product activated leads, or we call them QBRs, as a category of meeting types. And in the subcategory is like, account road mappings and just touch points of value for accounts that you're talking to. We see people use it for recruiting and support and other functions outside of sales. We do it internally for sales handoffs and onboarding, a calendar first approach. You close a deal, we need to have a call internally with customer success. We do a calendar first approach, save everybody internally a bunch of time, which is, by the way, just as important as setting meetings externally, is not wasting all your people's precious time. So be calendar first internally. Also a great place to practice is internally. It's really safe internal. So practice internally, calendar first.
And Trey, that I would just add that gets to the heart of like, what is an inbound lead? Is an inbound lead somebody that says, hey, I'm here and I want a demo request right now? Or, what's in between an ice cold outreach and an inbound lead is really
Exactly
where most of us spend a lot of our time these days, which is somebody downloaded a piece of content. We know that we're on their radar, but they're not asking us for a demo request. You can absolutely use a calendar first approach for those leads. And we've seen success doing that.
This is phenomenal, and there's a bunch of questions coming in, and we're going to get through. This will be our last one, and then we'll wrap. Thank you everyone for sticking and dropping in these great questions. Aaron, just a really tactical question here, and I know you went through it a little bit, but maybe just walk through the process one more time for folks. Question just coming in around: is there a separate email in addition to the meeting request? The interplay between the two.
Absolutely. So if you're doing this manually, it is common that a good practice to send a separate email to draw someone's attention to the calendar invite you sent and provide some context for it. If you're a customer of Chronologic, Chronologic has a technology that we actually embed the calendar invite within an email. So you see the calendar invite, single click to accept, and it has an email message, and it's actually packaged together. And we do this in Google and in Microsoft, which pretty much encompasses what all your customers are using, one of those two. So we actually put it together for you, so it's quicker and easier process for the prospect to accept.
But another thing to put in that email, it follows a good format, is straight up at the top of the email, tell them what you're asking for and be specific. Hey, Bill, how does next Tuesday at 2 p.m. work for your insert meeting type, work for your demo? Like right at the top. If you have to explain why you're doing that, you shouldn't be doing that, or your meeting type isn't valuable enough. Be specific, ask for a specific time and date so it doesn't feel spammy. And then if you want to be really slick, take that really nice agenda that you work so hard on and then drop it into the email as the meat. You're going to look at their email and go, man, this is a really sparse email. Yeah, it is. And that's not a problem. But if you just it stresses you out, take that agenda, pop it into the email as where you would type out your paragraphs and all the reasons why they should talk to you. Get rid of that, put in the agenda and say, hey, here's the agenda I want to cover. Boom. Huge amount of value right there. If they're not going to accept that, they're not going to accept anything.
I think this has been phenomenal. We've gone through this a few times in prep, seeing it live and in action. I'm still learning things, scribbling down notes here. Really quick, just last takeaways. If people remember one thing from this, Aaron, what's one thing that you want folks to remember here from our session today?
Well, I go back to the beginning. The last mile problem is bigger than people think. That it's not okay that out of 1,000 leads that you generate, only 86 of them convert to meetings. You can do better than that. And I would challenge you to look at speed to lead, a calendar first approach, the messaging that you use, because it's much easier to, instead of adding another 1,000 leads to the top of the funnel that can be very expensive, push yourself and your team and your company to get better at taking that 1,000 leads you have and converting more of them to meetings. And pay attention and call executives to the attention of what that drop off is today, and if you can improve the amount of meetings that result from a given set of leads.
I think that's great. And then Trey, any last words of advice or words of wisdom for folks, key takeaways from today?
Yeah, empathy. Like when you're sending out, when you're building this and thinking about how you're going to do this, and to Aaron's point, the status quo is not good enough. It isn't. You can convert more leads to meetings by multiples, not just by percents, by multiples. The way you do that is with empathy. It's putting yourself in the shoes of your customers, your prospects, and really sitting down and thinking, how many clicks is this going to take? Would they really care about this meeting? Would they really want to talk to me? And if the answer is no, it doesn't mean you can't meet with them. It means you need to put in more work into making your meeting more valuable.
This has been phenomenal. Aaron, Trey, I know you're both super, super busy. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share all this amazing insight with us. And thank you for the sponsorship as well. For folks on the webinar, this recording will be made available as soon as Zoom is finished processing. On behalf of the 17,000 and growing Modern Sales Pros members, Trey, Aaron, and the whole team at Chronologic, thank you so much for sharing this. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and a safe rest of your June.
Thanks you, Rich. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Everyone, take care. Have a wonderful day.